It was, for all intents and purposes, the end of the world. That's how Hebrew Bible scholar Wilda Gaffney begins her commentary on today's passage in Jeremiah. It was, for all intents and purposes, the end of the world. She goes on to give context to the first couple of verses, because to us it's just sort of a list of unfamiliar names. So she sets those verses within the U.S. where she lives and writes this comparison. Our national government has just collapsed as the result of an invading foreign power. There is no remnant of the military. There is no government. The President, First Lady, Cabinet, and Congress have all been exiled. All of the artists in New York and all of the steel workers in Pittsburgh were separated from their families and exiled as well. It was, for all intents and purposes, the end of the world. And then Jeremiah's letter shows up with a message about the end, but it's also a message about a beginning. The exiles might still rather listen to the prophet Hananiah. Just a chapter earlier, you can read Hananiah's message that, hey, this tragedy is all going to end real soon. God will defeat your enemies. Don't even worry about it. But Jeremiah, who was kind of a nobody at this point, just a small town boy trying to make it big in the big city, and not doing a great job of actually being listened to, Jeremiah said to Hananiah, "You made this people trust in a lie." And in his letter that we heard from, Jeremiah writes the truth as he understands he has heard it from God. The truth is, folks, he writes, is that you are going to need to make the best of a bad situation. There are no heavenly hosts or miraculous rescues on the current schedule. There's just you in Babylon with Babylonians, about as far from Jerusalem as you ever dreamt of being. What happens when dreams unravel? When you had been holding on hopefully, optimistically, even naively, to the way your life was going to go, and then reality comes screeching on a collision course with that dream. Those exiles didn't want the news that Jeremiah was bringing them. They wanted to go home. They wanted to go back to normal. They had plans. They were dreaming of getting back to those plans, to their homes, their identities, to the place where they believed they were nearest to God. But Jeremiah's letter tells them, listen, dreams are fine, but right now you have to wake up to where you are. Build yourselves a home where you are. And not just a temporary shelter. Plant a garden. Plan your nourishment for this season and the one to come. And put down roots for the generation to come. Get married, have kids, get your kids married. Keep living. Stop imagining the life that could have been and set about creating the life that is here. Biblical scholar Alphanetta Wines reflects on this passage. Sometimes the good news that we need to hear is not what we want to hear. She points out that just past this passage we heard today, we find a much-loved verse, Jeremiah 29:11. For surely I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans for your welfare and not for harm, to give you a future with hope. This promise wasn't made in sunny days. It was, for all intents and purposes, the end of the world. Wines writes that many people who love this verse would be appalled to realize that the beloved Jeremiah 29:11, along with verses 1-7, are words to a community that had been uprooted from the familiarity of home, traveled months to a place 900 miles away, that lives in a land whose language, food, and customs they neither know nor desire to learn. They would be dismayed to realize the verses dispense wisdom regarding how to respond to the face of war, defeat, and exile. They would be disheartened to know that the letter is about adjusting to painful circumstances rather than alleviating them. Yes, they would be more than appalled to know that blessing for the exiles comes in the form of adjusting to rather than escaping from their present situation. The exiles are having their dreams unravel. And somehow, heartbreakingly, it is God's own messenger who is telling them that they need to release their hold on those threads as they come undone. For the Israelites, exiled from their temple, these unraveled dreams of their homeland are directly linked to their understanding of their nearness to God's dwelling place. If they let go of Jerusalem, how can God be with them? But our unraveled dreams do not unravel God's presence. In fact, as Wines writes again, scholars tell us that much good came of this period of exile. Israel wrestled with the God questions and learned that worship could happen anywhere, not just in the temple. Jeremiah's letter is a reminder that no circumstance is beyond God's purview. The instructions in Jeremiah's letter boil down to be God's people in this place and in this time. And when you call upon me and come and pray to me, I will hear you. When you search for me, you will find me, if you seek me with all your heart. The people have been separated from their dreams of home, but God has not been separated from the people. And God is still dreaming. God is dreaming a big dream. The exiles are told, seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf, for in its welfare you will find your welfare. In Hebrew, in its shalom, you will find your shalom. God is promising to weave the tangled ends of the exiles back together, but they will not be alone as God's people. Their welfare is dependent on strangers, even on strangers they have considered enemies. And they are to pray for and work for the shalom of their new neighbors. They will find their new dream when they expand their vision and strengthen their whole community. Yahweh says, I am the God of these people to whom you have not yet opened yourselves up. This is one way this story can go. And I believe it is meaningful to imagine who we connect with in this story and who we don't. Who are the characters that we may not fully understand because of the distance of time and culture and power and privilege? I'd like to invite Rachel Yancey to share a story of unraveling from her experience working in Bangladesh. Thanks, Rachel, for bringing us into that world and for helping us also to think about this passage. What if we spend time with this passage thinking of ourselves in Canada as we are the Babylonians in this passage, and maybe even people whose, our governments have been part of creating these people who have no homes. I think that's an important reflection too. Maybe we can imagine more of the tensions for the Israelite exiles with the story of the Rohingya in our minds. Even if our stories are quite different, most of us can also identify with some experience of a dream being unraveled, even just in what we are living through right now, and our longing to go back to the things we used to enjoy and the people we want to be near. Lauren Wright Pittman, the artist of this image in front of me here, wrote, "Maybe when our lives unravel in transition, the loose ends of our dreams, the friends we leave behind, and the paths untraveled can become the roots that stabilize us in the new place where we find ourselves. These threads can create grounding that nourishes and transforms us into something new. We're going to take a turn, as the kids have shown us, to create something new, to create a space of beauty. This already is a space of beauty, but we are going to add our own touch to it, bring our own unraveled bits. You might be feeling in the middle of a great unraveling right now. I've talked to many people who have connected with this theme in the last few weeks. Or maybe you can identify with the steady weaving that is happening in our communal art project here, coming together in a new way. Wherever you are at in your life, whatever threads you have to bring, I invite you to offer it together with this whole community and trust that your shalom is part of the shalom of these gathered friends. Even or especially if you're not sure what beauty can be woven out of your own unraveled dreams right now, come and see how God can transform all of us. So I'm going to invite you when the song starts, and I want you to know that when the song is playing, you can't be seen online if that's a concern for you. And I'll invite you to put your masks on and take turns to come up and give each other space and come tie a ribbon on the trees here. You can start from the front and then come as you see that some people have been seated and there's room for more. God has promised a future with hope. Let's live into that hope.